Welcome to the Ask the Geographer podcast series, brought to you by the Education Department at the Royal Geographical Society with IBG. I'm Rachel, your host, and in each episode, I'll be joined by geographers from across the globe to delve into current events, publications, and research all tied to the fascinating world of geography. For this episode, you'll be hearing from Simon, who is interviewing our guest.
Today, we're looking at one of the most extreme environments on Earth, Antarctica. To talk more about this place, I'm joined by Max Worsley, who in November this year is planning to ski over 1,300 kilometres across the continent with his teammate Martin Nesse as part of the Onwards expedition. The expedition is expected to take approximately 2 months and is unsupported. Therefore, each member will be pulling 120 kilograms on those sledges called pulks that will carry everything they need for their journey. Beyond the physical and mental challenges, this expedition aims to raise awareness about Antarctica's role in global systems, from sea levels to climate regulation. Max, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So could you start by telling our listeners what the Onwards expedition involves, and looking at 2 different angles of this? What does unsupported mean, and what types of climate are you expecting to experience there?
Absolutely. So, yeah, as you mentioned, in a nutshell, we'll be flying down to Antarctica in November this year, early November, and then flying onwards to the edge of the continent, where we will start our unsupported ski expedition from right on the sea ice, right at the edge of the continent, all the way to the geographic South Pole. Just over 2 months, or around about 60 days. Unsupported, meaning that we are carrying all of our kit, all of our food, our fuel, medical supplies, everything that we need to survive for 2 months in Antarctica in our pulk, which is a Nordic term for a short sort of sled. And it means that the pulks will be quite heavy. They'll be around 120 kilograms, which when you're pulling it in Antarctica is more like pulling it on sand than it is on ice or snow. Antarctica is a desert. You've got to remember, it's there's no rainfall, no precipitation there. It's the world's biggest desert. And Amundsen used to call the snow fish glue. So I think it's going to feel like more than 120 kilos anyway. And a supported expedition would be where you have depots laid along the way. So on the route, there would be pre-laid depots with some food, some fuel, and then every time you get to a depot, you would leave your rubbish, your empty fuel canisters, your rubbish from your meals you'd been eating that previous week. You'd pick up some fresh supplies, and then later someone would come back behind you and pick up what you've left at that depot. So that's the difference. And this expedition for me is got a personal angle to it. My father did this exact route actually back in 2016, so it's going to be a special journey retracing his steps.
And moving on to thinking about Antarctica, what makes it such an important place that the rest of the world needs to know about and hear about?
So I think, in my opinion, there's a few different angles on Antarctica's importance, why it is important. In the first instance, there's its sort of global importance as, you could say, sort of the planet's regulator. I mean, Antarctica is one of the Earth's most important natural sort of control systems. It holds around 70% of the world's fresh water, all locked up in the ice. So that obviously has a big impact on water salinity in the surrounding oceans, which has a big impact on the ecosystems, etc. So even if a small proportion of that ice melts, it's going to drastically change not just water salinity, but sea levels globally. And that's not just sea levels, obviously, around Antarctica. That's in London, New York, all across the world. it's vast, Antarctica as well, and it's all white. It's the white continent. So it acts as a sort of giant mirror as well. So it's reflecting sunlight. It's the albedo effect. It's reflecting sunlight from the continent. And that obviously helps regulate the Earth's temperature. So underneath Antarctica, it is a continent. It's all, rock and landmass. So as that ice melts, as the white disappears and you've got more rock visible, there'll be less of that reflection, more water trickling into the oceans, fresh water. So that, is some of the global importance. It's an interesting one in the sense that it's this frozen sort of wilderness that is so far away from everyone that understandably people probably think that it's not going to affect them because it's at the bottom of the world and they're unlikely to ever go there. But the reality is that what happens there will affect you wherever you are on the planet. So it's very interconnected and it sort of governs the global ecosystems in that sense. It's also very undisturbed. So the top sort of global scientists are all down there. The top climate scientists are all down in Antarctica because it's the cleanest, least disturbed environment on Earth. So it allows scientists to study climate change over hundreds of thousands of years by studying the ice cores and any atmospheric changes without interference. So it can act as a sort of early warning system for the planet, which in this time of environmental change and climate change is very important. And I guess that sort of means that it has a symbolic importance as well, finally. It's like the last true wilderness. There's no permanent population. There's no industry in the traditional sense. It represents sort of something bigger, a place that isn't owned but shared globally, and perhaps like a benchmark for what the natural world should be like in all places around the planet.
And are you expecting to meet many scientists while you're there?
I'm expecting to meet scientists at the South Pole. So some people might think that the South Pole is just this barren nothingness, and understandable, but actually it is a international science station run by the US, but has scientists from many different nationalities working there year round. And actually scientists are the only people that are allowed on Antarctica during the winter. Scientists and those people that are supporting scientists, such as people working in logistics and chefs, etc. So at the South Pole, we'll meet some scientists there, which will be exciting. First people we'll see after 60 days on our own.
Yes, I think it'd be very exciting just to have a chat as well as find out all of the things that they're doing, because clearly they have such a crucial role to play in monitoring what's going on in Antarctica and sharing knowledge with the rest of the world as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good, thank you. What do you expect to see as you go across Antarctica? Will there be a lot of variation in what you observe?
Antarctica has two very different sides. There's the interior, which is this vast, barren, empty sort of area. And that's what we'll be traveling through most. I mean, it's a frozen desert. There's no vegetation. There's no wildlife. There's just the ice, the sky, and the horizon. And that might sound sort of slightly uneventful, but it's actually quite powerful. I've been lucky enough to have visited Antarctica sort of inland. And on the one side, it's like the scale is extraordinary. And it highlights how extreme and sort of fragile the whole place is. And that emptiness is what allows Antarctica to function as a climate regulator and research environment. But on the fringes of Antarctica, there is life everywhere. At the start of the expedition, we'll be near the coast, and we may encounter seals. We get flown to a emperor penguin colony, so we'll see a few emperor penguins at the beginning. But that's really where you've got all of the phytoplankton that make up the bottom of the food chain, and the krill and all the whales, seals, penguins, etc. I guess when we fly to the north of Berkner Island, we will look out onto the Weddell Sea and see some huge katabatic icebergs, which will, that is a clear sign of the ice breakup and the climate change around there. There have been some vast chunks of ice falling off the ice shelves in recent years. And I actually went down to Antarctica in February of this year, and we were on a boat and we visited the Antarctic Peninsula, and there were scientists on board and guides that have been going down there for the last 20 years. And they said that in the time that they've been going down there, they have noticed much more ice breakup and many more of these huge katabatic icebergs, big enough for you to land a plane on. So it's happening. I think people know that. And that's why the work that's going on down there in terms of studying the effects of climate change down there is so important, not just for Antarctica, but in order to help us understand and change things in other areas of the planet.
Yes, again, coming back to what we were talking about in terms of global significance.
Exactly.
Great. And how are you going to record and share what you will observe as you're moving across?
So we will keep diaries, firstly. So there will be our written journals of our observations throughout the whole trip. And we'll also be taking a lot of video and photo footage as well. So yeah, those two means. And it will be interesting comparing the photos and videos taken 10 years ago by my father, particularly when he was passing through areas like the Pensacola mountain range and up past the Wujek Ridge, and seeing, if those little spots of rock and little spots of ice up on the mountains are the same as they were 10 years ago. When my father did an expedition in 2008, retracing Amundsen's route to the pole, he was taking photos and comparing them to photos that had been taken 100 years ago. And the change was surprisingly very minor. You could see these little patches of snow on these mountain ranges that were identical to what my father was taking 100 years ago. So, but that's certainly not to say that climate change is not happening.
But also let's see what's happened in the last 10 years.
Exactly.
As you say, that could be far more marked.
Exactly.
And it's amazing to have reference points from your father's expeditions and also from others.
It's very interesting. And it would be special to take my father's diary on this expedition.
Right.
Because I'll be doing the exact route, skiing in his tracks, and we'll be camping in the same locations pretty much that he camps. I've got the exact longitude and latitude coordinates of where he camps. So it will be quite special reading from his diary 11 years later off in the exact location where he wrote it.
Definitely. And how much do you think technology has changed in the last decade that may enable you to do things that he wasn't maybe able to do when he was there?
Yeah, technology is growing and developing faster than I think we can keep up with it, to be honest. And there's certainly some, better GPS devices these days and satellite phones, etc. Important pieces of kit that are there for safety and navigation. And it really makes one think of exploring back in the early 1900s, Shackleton, Scott, Amundsen, no GPS, no satellite phone. That was true exploring back then, and now we have so much technology at our fingertips. It's also a way in which I'm going to try to connect with others and share the journey via social media, for example, through my website, because that is a big part of this whole project. There is the personal side to it, and there's obviously the goal of reaching the South Pole, but the expedition and the project has a lot more to it than just that.
Yes, and that leads me neatly on to the next thing I was going to ask. As you've said, it goes beyond reaching the South Pole, although that's an achievement in itself. But what overall impact are you hoping to have as a result of what you're doing?
So reaching the South Pole will be a huge sort of physical challenge, but the real purpose of the journey is to use it, as you say, as a platform for impact. And I feel very lucky, very privileged to be doing this journey. And I think it sort of comes with a responsibility as well to be able to share it and share the story. And it's about turning an extreme remote experience into something that is accessible and meaningful to others, and sort of and how they relate to that. So there's two angles really to the whole impact that we want to generate, and one is focused on people and one is focused on the planet. The people impact that we're trying to generate from the expedition is all around forming a deeper connection between people, particularly young people, and nature and our natural world. We're now living in a technological age, a digital age, where we have devices everywhere, and in one sense we are more connected than ever. You can FaceTime your family from across the world, but in another sense we're more disconnected than we ever have been. We are more disconnected from each other as people. You see people sitting down at dinner just on their phones, and we're also more disconnected, I feel, from the natural world and from nature and the wild and the wilderness and whatever you want to call it. And I think that's more apparent with the younger generation who have grown up with the devices and the technology and all of the digital stuff right at their fingertips. And I want to try and use this expedition to help motivate and encourage people to sort of be curious about the natural world and to feel confident in these places, and to show that sort of adventure is possible and fun and has loads of benefits to it on all scales. And that doesn't mean you have to row across an ocean or climb Mount Everest or walk to the South Pole. Alistair Humphreys, the adventurer writer, came up with the brilliant term of micro adventures. And it really is just that, an adventure can be on all scales, going down to your local woodland and going for a walk, or going down to your local river and going for a swim one afternoon. Those are adventures, and those are really the days and small adventures that spark that curiosity and confidence and lead onto something bigger. So that leads me on to the first charity that we are supporting, the People Charity, which is British Exploring Society. And they are an extraordinary organisation that have been around since 1932. They were founded by George Murray Levick, who was on Scott's first expedition. And they take young people on expeditions and really put the sort of responsibility in their hands. They have to plan the route, they have to do most of the decision making. And the impact on these young people is transformational, and it gives them a chance to get out there and experience nature and the natural world. And I think it's brilliant, and the impact is wonderful. So I've connected with them over the last year or so, and I'm really pleased that we're supporting them with their mission. And so that leads us then on to planet, and the two are very interlinked, because I don't think people will ever feel any desire or need to protect our planet and our natural world and nature if they don't feel some form of connection to it. So hopefully the people side is going to help motivate a deeper connection with nature. But the planet side is also very much an educational piece. It shines that initial spotlight on Antarctica, on why it is so important, on the sort of principles and values around protecting somewhere as special as Antarctica. But then those same principles and values should be applied to all natural areas, whether it's our rivers, our forests, our deserts, our green city spaces. These are all important places on our planet. And so we'll then, on the social side of things, zoom out and look at all of these different spaces. And the charity that we are supporting for the planet is the Earthshot Prize. And they're a wonderful organisation that supports change makers, innovators, entrepreneurs that are working on the greatest sort of challenges that we are facing in our natural spaces today. And they help with leadership and funding some really inspiring, incredible solutions to help our planet and the environmental challenges that we're facing.
Yes, and I'm sure we both encourage everybody to have a look at all the projects that they've been involved in on their website for further information. Just thinking about some of the skills that you need to undertake your expedition, how do you think those skills might transfer to different environments or local, smaller exploration?
So I think a lot of the technical skills are transferable. You've got to know how to navigate. So that is both in what some might say these days, the old school way with a map and compass, or with a GPS as well. And those skills are definitely transferable, whether you're in the Antarctic, whether you're in the Sahara Desert. You need to be able to navigate. You need to be able to navigate terrain safely, make good decisions on route picking, etc. And those are some of the things that certainly I've learnt growing up and finessed over the last sort of 3-4 years in particular, training for this expedition. There are other things such as putting up the tent and good camp routine. You know, anyone can do it, but doing it really efficiently. And when you're on a long expedition, efficiency is key. Doing the same task, but in a shorter amount of time, and losing less energy or using less energy to complete that task really does make a difference when you're doing a sort of longer endurance expedition.
Yes. And that leads me neatly on to ask you a bit more about how you prepare for this type of journey.
So a few different sort of strings to the preparation. I suppose first is the physical preparation. So it is a long endurance expedition and you're pulling a 120 kilogram sled. So preparing for sort of sustained effort over a long period of time is important. So we'll be pulling the sled for sort of 8 to 12 hours a day for 60 days. And so the training focus there is on strength. So you're in the gym doing compound exercises where the exercise targets more than one muscle group, such as a squat or a deadlift. So that's strength. You do endurance training as well. So long, steady efforts, maybe going on a sort of 2-hour run or a 4-hour bike ride, something like that. And then there's efficiency as well and mobility and flexibility. It's important to do the stretching and do the mobility exercises as well. Then there's the technical preparation. So skills like navigation, managing extreme cold and layering systems, or, you know, if you're doing the Marathon des Sables, for example, an endurance race in the Sahara Desert, you want to be able to, you know, manage the extreme heat, etc., keeping cool. And then also maintaining your equipment in harsh environments, you know, in -40, making sure that batteries are kept, you know, in the right way and you're protecting the important equipment. And then I guess finally, and perhaps the most important, is the mental preparation, arguably the most important element. You're dealing with the monotony of doing exactly the same thing for 60 days. You're dealing with the isolation. A lot of people do this solo, but in this case, it's just Martin and I. The discomfort, so the cold, the fatigue, the limited sort of recovery. So you've got to have, for these long endurance expeditions, you've got to have a really good reason, as in my opinion, as to why you're doing it. You know, you'll be 2-3 weeks in and you'll be asking yourself, what have I signed up for? And if you can't answer that question, if you can't answer why am I here in the middle of nowhere, pulling a 120 kilogram sled, 1,349 kilometers, if you can't answer that question confidently and quickly, I think, you know, you're going to struggle. And that probably applies to other sort of significant endurance expeditions as well. So it's about building the habits and the mindset before you arrive.
Yes. And how do you cope if you're halfway through it and you've had a really bad day and you suddenly think, how am I going to get through the rest of it? What do you do?
Well, I think for me, it's great that Martin's going to be there. I think I'll have low days, bad days, and Martin will be there to help motivate me and pick me up, and the same goes for Martin. If you're on your own, then you've got to be very good at self-motivating. I mean, I know, for example, when Dad went on his own, my mum got members of the family and his friends to write little messages of inspiration and motivation, and he would open those like on a low day and read a couple of them. And I think
a great idea.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing really helps when you're really in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
But practically, and if anything goes wrong on an expedition, you do have a sort of search and rescue team, a logistics team that is on call to come and pick you up. But that's probably the most expensive taxi ride you're ever going to have in your life.
Of course.
And it's really
avoid that if you can.
Yeah, avoid at all costs, and it's very much the last resort. So
yeah. And what about communication with the outside world as you're doing it? You said you will have satellite phones, but to what extent will you use them? Will you try and stay detached and determined and only use it on occasions, or might you chat with people online in the way that you might at home?
Yeah, so we'll have 2 satellite phones, and it's the equipment that we have to take. The logistics company that we go with, they say that you have to take 2 satellite phones, one as a contingency. And every evening you have to call the logistics company and to tell them where you are, your coordinates, lat and long, and how far you've travelled that day and how you're feeling, etc. And if you don't make a call to them for 48 hours, they will come and look for you in your last known location. But then you've got friends and family and everything you're alluding to there. And I think there certainly is sort of a point in not calling back home and getting sort of too used to speaking to family and friends, because I think being in the zone and in the flow of just being out there without too many external distractions is really important. I do have my mother and sister back home, and in light of what happened to my father in Antarctica in 2016, when he sadly passed away crossing the continent, my poor mother, I will definitely be making sure that I call her.
More contact with her.
Yeah, probably most days, just to let her know that I'm okay.
That's good. But yes, we're sitting here in central London right now, and we all know the extent to which we're constantly receiving information and messages on our phones. So it's how do you actually balance that with being immersed in what you're doing, and that's more important.
Yeah, and I, in the one sense, I'm actually quite looking forward to just disconnecting from everything while we're out there. I think there's definitely something to be said about just, I love these expeditions and spending time in nature and actually sort of connecting with one's environment, you know, whether it's going for a hike or going for a wild swim in a river or open water off the beach. It's about connecting with one's environment. And, you know, I will try not to look at my phone or any devices.
Avoid the mundane things that
Exactly.
sometimes we all have to deal with.
That's it, yeah.
So, Max, thank you again for joining us today and sharing your insights on what is to be, I'm sure, an unforgettable experience. Our conversation really highlights that Antarctica is not just a remote and extreme environment, it's a vital part of our global system. From regulating the Earth's climate to influencing sea levels, what happens there has consequences for people and places all around the world. We wish you and Martin the best of luck with the expedition, and we look forward to following your journey later in the year. But before we close, can you just give our listeners an idea about how they can follow your expedition when you're there, and also catch up with some of the findings perhaps afterwards when you get back?
Absolutely. So we've got a website. So the website is onwards-expedition.com. And then we also have an Instagram channel where we post a lot of content on our training, all of our preparations for the expedition, as well as, you know, fun storytelling with partners and sponsors, and then educational content on Antarctica and other wild areas. And that is with the handle, so it's the @ onwards_expedition. So yeah, those 2 ways you can find us and see all the updates. And when we go on the expedition ourselves in November, we will have a live tracking feed as well, which will be on the website. So you'll be able to see exactly where we are in Antarctica.
Max, it's been a fantastic conversation today. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing with us, and I look forward to hearing a lot more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to the Ask the Geographer podcast series on soundcloud.com or your preferred streaming platform. Dive deeper into the world of geography and stay informed with our wide range of resources, many of which are available for free. School membership grants access to even more resources, including online lectures and supporting materials for both teachers and learners. Explore our resources and discover our additional offers for education at www.rgs.org/schools.